everyone, and welcome to the Communities Podcast by our Student Union. This episode, The Heart of UAL, celebrating unique creative identities, cultures, and innovation, will focus and explore the distinct creative environment, cultural identity, and sense of community at UAL colleges, and how these unique ecosystems shape the student experience and contribute to the UAL's vibrancy. I'm your host, Sayali Waghmare, Arts and Civic Student Communities Officer, and I am honored to have Head of College of London College of Fashion and Matt, the Dean of Research from the CSM. Thank you for joining us today. Could you please introduce yourself and background?
My name is Matt Malpass. I'm the Associate Dean of Research at Central St Martins. I've worked at UAL, Central St Martins for 15 years as a course leader, program director, and now taking responsibility for research at CSM.
Thank you. Andrew, could you please introduce yourself?
Of course, and thanks so much for the invitation to come and speak to you. My name's Andrew Teverson. I'm Head of London College of Fashion, and I'm a Pro-Vice Chancellor at University of the Arts. I've started at UAL in 2019 as a Dean, and I've been Head of College since 2022.
Thank you. Thank you for your lovely introduction. To start, could you please tell our student audience what makes your college's creative ecosystem unique and how does it shape the student experience?
Well, there's so much to talk about in terms of our college and what makes it unique. And one of the interesting things at the moment is that we're on a kind of pathway of change because we've just moved from 6 campuses into one campus. And that's been really brilliant for the college coming together into a single institution, and it's been great for our community all being on one site, and it's a beautiful building. But it's also early days in that, so we're kind of just learning about who we are in this building and how we develop our communities and how we work together with our partners in our localities. So in many ways we're there's quite a lot about the college that's new and that's developing. But in some sense too, we're also coming home as a college, because when we were founded in the early 20th century, the colleges that came together to form us were technical trade schools.
Yeah.
One of them from Shoreditch, and later we joined with Cordwainers College, which was in Mare Street. So we've got strong East London roots. And I think, to come back to your question, one of the things that really defines us is our sense of location, our connection with the community, and our connection with local communities and businesses and industry. And we've really been working on the placemaking elements of our journey. And the fact that we originated in trade schools is something that really has continued as part of the core identity of the college, because we really are orientated towards industry and trade and professionalism. And I think one of the things that distinguishes the student experience at LCF is the sense that we're orientated towards a profession. We're also creative, of course, and it's about creative practice. I mean, it's about skills and making, but we're also the only fashion college with a business school that's built into it. And I think that is continuing our traditional connection with business and industry. And I think it helps shape the particular approaches to fashion that we have in this college. Yeah.
That's so true. Thank you. How about you, Matt?
Well, listening to Andrew, I'm not so sure what makes us so unique, because I think there's a lot of synergy, I think, between Andrew just said and Central St Martins. The CSM sort of brought all of its colleges together into one site a few years back. And I think what we've seen, having done that and having this 11-year lens on that now, I think is one of the things to celebrate in this is how the space, the disciplines being together in one space, disciplines ranging from art, design, through fashion, architecture and spatial practices, performance, is this site for collaboration, and collaboration in a very plural context. Within the college, everybody is with a belief and an understanding and an advocacy for creative practice, for the arts, for design, and that's great. Sort of being in an institution like University of the Arts, we're not competing with sort of other disciplines for resource or to defend sort of the value of creative practice. And I think, but within that community of creative practices, there is plurality, there is difference, and it's great, I think, to have these different fields in one space, in this collaborative environment, within this context of plurality. And I think one of the things that certainly CSM benefits from, and I think this can be said across UAL, is the diversity in its cohorts.
Yeah.
And so, you have a diversity of program in one space, diversity of course in one space, and that sort of enriched by a real sort of diversity and plurality in the student body. That's a really vibrant and energetic and restless and ambitious context to be working in.
That sounds so amazing, having that space where like any artist or student who aspire to be an artist, having that community collaboration and resources availability to make it happen. It's very important for any institution.
Just to pick up on what
Yeah.
something Matt was saying, I really recognise that the benefits of valuing the arts at University of the Arts have been in other institutions as well, where you always feel a bit secondary, always having to justify your existence compared to the engineering or nursing or the medical
Yeah.
departments. So being in a university where the value of the arts is never questioned is a real delight, and actually it is something that holds all of the colleges together, which is that investment in creativity and creative practice.
Yeah, for sure. Even in your colleges like Camberwell, Chelsea, Wimbledon, and the LCC as well, like all these practices are there. And we, as you said, like we are kind of coming together as a central services. It's definitely helping students to grow as well. Can you please share a specific tradition or initiative that embodies this uniqueness? Is there any specific tradition, like we say, like CSM or all our UAL colleges has particular tradition or that culture within it? It has been going on since years and years. So is there any particular tradition that is there and it's kind of complement to the uniqueness of the college?
Again, there's all sorts of examples. I think the sort of the public show of work, like showcase, is something that is a tradition that sort of is reframed and rethought on an ongoing basis. And so at CSM, and I think something that the space now affords is things like the first year fashion show, that is the production of a collection of work after the first block or the first term, and the whole building is sort of given over to that space. And then other things that have emerged since we've been in the building at Granary Square, lots of work in progress shows, so interim shows. I think this is something that's become a tradition where postgraduates will come together and again take over sort of some of the public spaces in the building and produce interim shows to collect feedback on work before it's fully formed. So sort of take that insights and that feedback into the dissertation projects, or the thesis projects, the final collections, etc. So I think public presentation of work and then sort of learning from that is something that's sort of in the like core to a lot of the courses at CSM, a bit of a tradition. I don't know, other things will come to mind.
No,
It's a-
that's a lovely tradition to giving students a practical environment to learn from it since the first semester itself. It's a really good tradition. Thank you for continuing that. How about you, Andrew?
To continue with what I was talking about earlier, I think the emphasis on business and industry and professionalism is always woven through
Yeah.
what LCF does, and I think our collaborations with industry partners like Kering and Monsoon, and more recently Gucci for the Gucci scholarships, is a really important part of what we do and what we do for our students. And the way in which we kind of build a structure around our industry connections is quite important. So we have our Founders Club, which is for alumni who've left the university but founded their own businesses, who come back and talk to students and do mentoring activities and things like that. And the work we've done in our new locality around working with local businesses and providing mentoring and support for small businesses, like the Fashion District. We've got the Fashion District Festival coming up. And like the work we do at Making for Change, which is the studios at Poplar Works, where we offer kind of training and incubation in relation to small businesses, and offer specific qualifications for women prisoners and former prisoners as part of rehabilitation exercises. So those kind of outreach activities and interest in our community and in profession and businesses, I think, is really important to who we are and what we do for our students as well.
Thank you.
And it maintains that sort of that professional disciplinary currency. So bringing that, so as well as sort of going from the inside of the colleges and working out with communities, etc., having industry and professionals come in to sort of to teach and to share that sort of what is live in the professional world at the moment. So I think one of the founding principles at CSM was that its teaching staff should be practitioners. Now times change, and that's sort of not exactly sort of the status of things now, but there is still a large number of hourly paid lecturers and visiting lecturers that come in to bring that expertise from industry into the studios, into the classrooms. The challenge there is to strike that balance between sort of like teaching professionals, research active staff, those staff that are engaged in sort of the type of knowledge exchange, sort of taking the what we know as an institution out into the world and sort of having impact with that, alongside those professionals coming in to share what they know from professional practice with students, all in all preparing the student for life beyond the institution.
Yeah, thank you. And regarding the practices and that opportunities, creating those for students to collaborate as well. It's also important because as we know that students always ask like, what are the cross-college collaboration opportunities for them? So I would like to ask next question, like, how do you see a cross-college collaboration working at UAL, and how do the different cultures perspective across the colleges fuel the creativity and innovation?
Well, I think we're definitely on a journey towards greater collaboration. We have been since I've been here. We're becoming more and more one university, and there's been more and more sort of commonalities between the colleges. I think there's a long way to go, and I think we are beginning to think about what kind of joint courses between colleges might look like, and we've just been working on a common framework for our taught postgraduate courses, because at the moment they look different in every college. But if we had a similar framework, we could start to exchange more, and we could start to offer maybe units that could be taken between in different colleges. So, for instance, our business school could offer something around sort of entrepreneurial practice and business models into a course in CSM, and vice versa. I think one of the big steps we've taken towards greater connectivity is around the things that we share that aren't in the college but are shared collectively. So, for instance, the institutes, the Creative Computing Institute now offers teaching to all of our students in the form of diplomas and built opportunities. So that's a great opportunity for us to start to break down the silos and the barriers between colleges, and for us to work together more and learn from each other and our students to have that experience of working across the institution.
For sure. Would you like to add something to that, Mark?
Yeah, I think it's a great step. So things like common frameworks, where the courses in one college complement the sort of structures and courses in another. I think that will make collaboration a lot easier, because when things are taking place at different times, sort of it's even within an individual college to sort of like to bring something online like a collaborative unit, creating space for a collaborative unit. This poses challenges, because again, you've got different modes of learning. There's in terms of one of those strengths that I talk about in terms of plurality is also a challenge, because different disciplines sort of teach and learn at different paces. There's different, so like finding these moments and these sweet spots for collaborative activity is much more of a challenging sort of task than it might first appear. But I think a huge amount of work has been undertaken at UAL to sort of to create these spaces. And again, I think when you're presented with the types of courses and frameworks, it's not working towards homogenization. Actually, there's again different ways that it can be done within these frameworks, which I think is a real positive thing. I know that we sort of share staff. So there's a tutor on the course that I used to run, MA Industrial Design, that I know teaches at LCF. And so there is, and we often talk about, that would be a great brief to run sort of cross college, because we're working towards a similar thing, a similar output. And I also think where we see quite a lot of cross college collaboration is at that level of research and knowledge exchange. So where we might have tutors and academics that are working on research projects together, So if I think, so Adam Thorpe and Lorraine Gammon, who are based at CSM, working with Dilys Williams and Sammy Black at LCF, and Alice Prendeville at LCC, and Becky Early at CCW. And so these sort of academics are undertaking work that ultimately sort of filters down into curriculum. There's the level of PhD, there's cross-college supervision. And I think there's something to learn from these sorts of activities where you've got sort of cross-college PhD research, KE projects, the institutes, and sort of as a sort of a proto practice that sort of might like filter down into undergraduate, postgraduate curriculum. Yeah.
There's a great deal our students drive themselves as well. I'd say it's not all about what we do. It's about students making their own communication routes and cross collaborations. I think our students are obviously located in individual colleges, but they also maybe could have lived together and shared houses. They meet each other outside and they work together. And actually, a lot of the great work the student union does around clubs and societies to bring students together across the university help with that more kind of grassroots innovative practice around collaboration.
Yeah,
And often those projects are the ones that are much more interesting than any sort of project or brief that we can set.
for sure. That's why I was like, I need to ask cross collaboration between the colleges, because students always do that. As RCSU also has spaces, they have the events and exhibitions going on, and we ask students to submit their work. And a lot of time is coming from the cross-college students friends group, which are living together, maybe in the halls or outside the halls. And they are really looking forward within the colleges as well, like if they get to do from the college side of like those projects and those opportunities. Yeah, and as I said, like we have, as you mentioned, the clubs and society, but we also have like very diverse artistic student bodies. Like we have students, international students, home students, but between that, the diverse ethnicity and cultural backgrounds of the students. How do you manage their experience and plus their other student experience and overall academic experience at UAL?
Well, at first I'd say I think the diversity of our student body is one of our superpowers, and I think it's a great one of the great things we offer students is delivering education for them within a very diverse environment. We are a very global community, and fashion is a very global industry. So the industry that our students are going into will also be extremely diverse. You'll be having to work with lots of people and learn how to work with lots of people from different cultural backgrounds. So I actually think that's a really important part of our education, and we really welcome the diversity of our student community. I mean, in terms of what we do specifically to enable that, I think some of the things we've been mentioning around collaborative opportunities, just the way you work in a classroom to build communities, to enable students to work with one another, to bring students together on collaborative projects. It is part of that process of building trust, building community, building connectivity.
Thank you. About Matt, how do you manage the diverse community and the student experience at CSM?
I think there are a number of projects that cut across the college. So there's projects that are addressing matters of concern and emergency that require, again, this plurality of voice and worldview to be able to sort of address the complexity that's within the challenges. So things like the climate emergency network, things like Earth Week, projects that they're bigger than us all and require that that diversity of experience in order to contribute to understanding and progressing towards a better future. So I think one strategy is that okay, how do we bring people together and address these large matters of concern and ensure that there is voice within that. There is no end of clubs and societies that takes place within the college. So I think one of the studios on a Wednesday afternoon, one of the teaching studios is given over to a club that looks at Persian printmaking and an Islamic art, and that's open to everybody. So I think like turning space over to these sorts of activities that's open to all. And we've seen, again, in that one particular example, how that club has spiraled, where like my MA industrial design students have looked into the room and said, what's going on in there? Have ended up sort of joining that activity, and that activity is then sort of the collaborations occurred, and then we've ended up sort of seeing work make it into actual curriculum delivery, etc. Strategies where I'm just reflecting on some of the teaching strategies that there are across the college. So forgive the language. There's within the fine art program, there's something called a shit crit, and this critique ban tutors. So in order to sort of try and sort of like manage the power and leverage things, tutors are not allowed to critique students' work, and the strategy is developed that sort of creates a more student-led model of critique. And I think if I reflect on some of the teaching practices from our product ceramic industrial design program, huge international cohort, developing strategies like that based on Auguste Boal's theatre of the oppressed, this way to sort of set a scene or an environment where you act out, or you articulate something, you talk or discuss something, but you do it as a group of people, and you are performing in the round. The audience in the round, if they sort of see something that they would like to change or contribute, they step into the scene or the conversation, and that conversation resets. Somebody moves out, you replay the scene or the conversation. What this strategy does is it sort of tries to, again, manage dominant voice. It makes people sort of it gives space and time for people to listen and participate. You participate just by listening, because we feel, you come to a place like Central St. Martin's or LCF, and, there's a lot of pressure on people to perform. And sometimes it's important to sort of just give space for people to listen, and to actively, passively participate, to reflect, and then maybe come back to things later. So I think where am I going with this convoluted sort of story? I think developing strategies that recognize that it's not always about sort of performing, and giving space for reflection and time, that sort of honors different ways that we see the world, different ways we think about the world. We live in language. Some people sort of are more bombastic in language than others. Some people are more subtle in language than others. So I don't know, ways to sort of give space, time, pedagogies of care. I think that one of the things that I take from my experience of working at UAL is that I think for the most part, like, there's a pedagogy of care. People like want to get the best out of people. And there's a lot of care and attention in the strategies and approaches that are employed in order to do that. Yeah,
That's
sorry.
so lovely. No, it's perfect. Like giving the space to students to open up, because, as you said, like students are from different backgrounds. Not everybody is that confident enough to step forward and talk and create that community within it. But giving them that space where they feel like expressing themselves
Uh,
and creating that environment around them, it's beautiful.
But I think space is something super important, because even in curriculum, when you design a curriculum, there's often the tendency to sort of put more and more and more in. It's you're going to get so much out of this course. You got to, but sometimes that space to reflect and time and breathe, that's equally as important as sort of being in a studio with a tutor, or being in a lecture hall, being able to make sense, digest, and then practice and learn through through action and what you do. That's important. So building space into your educational experience is super important.
Yeah.
And we're discovering that, particularly now, and being in a new building, it's really important to enable students to feel like they belong and they can have ownership of the space. And so in the first year we arrived, we were having to get used to so much. It was quite challenging to produce, to create that sense of community and belonging. But I think as we begin to bed into our new environment, our intention is to increasingly enable students to feel like they belong here.
Yeah.
So we've got downstairs, for instance, we've got the Wolfson Gallery, which has a kind of rolling exhibitions of student work, kind of course by course, and we're beginning to get sort of student work displayed in the spaces. And I think the student union's been having takeovers of our canteen area and things like that. So ways to try and enable that sense of belonging and ownership. It's not easy.
Yeah, thank you for creating that spaces as well. We know that this building is new, but for students, like to have that space and create that spaces which can make like it comes within inside, like to leave those spaces and create that environment for themselves is very important. So thank you. And my next question, oh, what are the challenges to maintain the diversity? I mean, as you mentioned so many examples, like you are trying to create that sense of community belonging here for students, create those spaces. What are the challenges in that process?
Well, I suppose working with different people in from different backgrounds and with different experiences is always a challenge because there are kind of cultural barriers and things like that. So, but in some ways also that's life, that's work, that will be your industry. So that's both one of the challenges and but also one of the positives about the experience of studying here, I think. I mean, language barriers, inevitably, when we've got so many international students, can present challenges. So, which is why we have UAL has a language centre where sort of students can do sort of specific courses and activities around language development, and we have our academic support unit, which kind of sits separate from the schools, which does sort of work with students for whom English might not be their first language,
Yeah.
around sort of developing their essays and developing their writing. So there will be some specific challenges around that, which we need to put in sort of structures of support for.
I think there may be there are external challenges as well. Like we talked about, we don't need to, like, internally, we don't need to sort of like advocate for the value of the arts and creative subjects, but externally we do. There's sort of creative education. Under the previous government was sort of like described as a sort of low value, sort of, it's not STEM. And I think that these sorts of external narratives do actually they do have an impact. They do have an impact when sort of someone's deciding sort of like where they're going to go to university, where they're having conversations with parents or the folks that'll be supporting them. And these things do factor in. So I think one of the and in order to sort of like maintain diversity, you need people who want to come and study these creative subjects. So I think there are some there are external challenges that we face, and I think as an institution we're in a strong position to be able to like to advocate for the value of the creative subjects. And it's a huge contributor to the creative economy, to businesses. The amount of startups that you see coming out of LCF is incredible, and and so I think some of the external pressures are do challenge.
Yeah,
So
that's very true. Like these external challenges also face the students and as well, like they don't get the fundings that are available whole wide for the STEM students, which is not available for the art students, and the government funding available to the art schools, not availability of the schools but the other institutes, which make a lot difference in the students pursuit what to go for the higher education, and if they do pursue arts and what it's gonna look like.
Yeah, cost of study is
Oh yeah.
a real barrier, and I think we'd like to be more diverse than we currently are in terms of capacity of people to study here who can't fund their own education. So I think the more we can work with industry to develop scholarships and bursaries, the more we can work with our donors and our partners to to grow opportunities for students to have to be financially supported, the more diverse we will become.
yeah. So projects to sort of like to work to sort of like diversify socioeconomic class, outreach projects, sort of insights projects at CSM, with the intention sort of to grow that sort of diversity, not just in terms of internationalization, race, but sort of in terms of class as well.
Yeah. I mean, just earlier when we came up here, we walked past Michelle Buchanan, who looks after our outreach, and she was there with kind of students from a local school who we're getting in. So the kind of outreach work we do, and as you mentioned insights, the kind of the capacity to support students coming in for whom they're the first in their family to come to higher education, I think is really important.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think this also relates to something, Andrew, you said around sort of the placemaking agenda as well. That sort of that. So now, as big institutions sort of become a sort of a center in these big developments, and sort of there's a responsibility that comes with that, and sort of, and I think so working with local schools to show the opportunities that sort of a creative education like does open. And it's not necessarily just about sort of training in art to be an artist. The sort of skills, competencies, the ability to manage complexity and risk, it sets folks up for all sorts of careers beyond creative subjects.
My next question is related to student union and school student reps and course reps as well. How do the student union, student reps, and societies or clubs contribute to the both academic and student experience within your college?
Well, the student union is critically important to how we interface with students. So shout out to Katwamba, who's been a brilliant sabbatical rep for LCF this year. And actually, it's been really brilliant that he's been able to be in post for 2 years,
Yeah.
because that's given us a kind of a level of continuity, and both of us have really got to understand the challenges facing students in a way more than you could in just a single year. But OCAT we have regular catch-ups. He's come to a couple of our executive group meetings, and we've worked together so that I can understand the priorities the student union has for LCF and vice versa. So I think it's really important for the college to encourage a sort of constructive collaborative relationship with the student union reps.
This is my first year being a communities officer, but I have heard a lot of good things from the CAT as well, like the brilliant work they have done for the LCF and in collaboration with you and all the school reps as well. How about Matt?
Just central to everything, I think, just from the level of sort of course representatives, essential to like development and enhancement of courses and programs, that sort of that to be the student voice, and to sort of to recognize, or just need to recognize the amount of work that goes into this as well, because you're representing a cohort of students. The amount of work to actually collect that insight and voice, and then sort of share that with various stakeholders at various levels, be it stage leaders, course leaders, program directors, deans, head of colleges. If there's a sort of sitting on all sorts of committees, like be it course committees, board of studies, like endless numbers of committees, and to have the student voice represented sort of at all levels is super important, because I think it's core to what we do, and to listen and have student reps, the student union, be sort of like active participants in sort of the operation of everything that we do is super important.
Yeah.
Central.
And it's not, I mean, it's sometimes very reasonably they're challenging us as well and holding us to account. And I think that's a really important part of the role. And actually, the student reps I've seen working at UAL have been really, really good at that. And you've got to be quite courageous in some of those meetings to say, actually, no, I think you're not doing this well enough, is a great skill.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's kind of related to the next question as well. Like, it's very important for the institution to keep improved and have those students' voices and like their needs at the forefront, because we know that even I finished last year, the student needs this year that might be changed because of some socioeconomic environment or political changes, geological changes, so many changes happening in the world so fastly that student needs keep changing, and to improve with that, student union definitely plays a really important part. What's your key initiative or the goal for your college this year, and to enhance the student experience, and how do you incorporate the student feedback in these plans?
Wow. At CSM last year, there was a huge investment in sort of technical resource, trying to improve the space, improve the sort of the physical infrastructure in the space. We've been in this building for 15 years, and it's now time for a bit of refresh that will aid the sort of student experience. So better lecture facilities, I suppose, we're benefiting, I suppose, from some of the learning that sort of has occurred as LCF has moved into this building. So a bit of a technical sort of refresh at CSM. That was a bit of a priority in response to some calls from student reps and the student union. But I think one of the biggest thing that's happening at Central St. Martin's at the moment is we are going through quite a large structural change. we're moving to a school structure. Now, this might not mean anything to most people, but what it does by moving the organisation of courses, the programs into a school structure, is it aligns with the rest of UAL. So as we were talking earlier about our ability to maybe sort of like work more collaboratively across institution, now at CSM we can work more collaboratively across schools, because some of these changes, these structural changes that are being made, are allowing us to sort of map opportunities and sort of and I think organize ourselves in a way that's going to provide more opportunities. So it's this shift to schools, the Schools of Thought project. Again, big structural change, aligning with the rest of the institution. Going through that process, students and student reps have been engaged in all aspects of that restructure, because obviously we need the student voice as you make massive change.
Thank you. Andrew?
Well, I've sat here for half an hour and haven't mentioned sustainability, so I'm going to mention sustainability now. Sustainability is critical to the fashion industry and the future of fashion, and it's something our students want to see as really central to their education. So we've been looking at all our courses and embedding sustainability as a core value in terms of the learning outcomes, what we teach, how we teach, what we deliver. And actually that's part of a bigger sort of review of our portfolio, to think about how we teach and what we teach, which is really orientated towards us achieving with the key objectives of our operating plan this year. And one of the other big challenges we are facing into through that portfolio review is our awarding gaps. So the gaps we have in terms of the awards we give to students from different groups, different ethnicities, and so on. And we do have gaps, awarding gaps, and so it's I think we're duty bound really to recognise that, to try and understand why, to look at our educational models, how we assess, how we teach, how we deliver, what our courses look like, in order to eliminate that gaps. So that's kind of what we're working on at the moment. I think sort of looking forward, we mentioned cost of study earlier. I think it's probably the biggest challenge facing students, particularly students living and studying in London. And I mean, continuous dialogue with Kat as our student union representative. Our students raise it in the various forums we have for talking to them, and in the feedback they give us. And we've kind of been tinkering around the edges. We've been working on scholarships and donations and things, which helps. We've been looking at subsidised food in the canteen, sharing of materials. We've been looking at how we talk to students about the materials they use for their courses, and encouraging them not to feel like they have to use the most expensive materials to get good results. So we're really listening to all of that. And I think kind of next year I'd like to do something sort of cross college, but perhaps even cross university, that takes a much more consistent approach to thinking about the cost of study challenge.
Wow, thank you so much for taking that feedback into your next objective, because as we create so many reports and the surveys insights from the students which affects them, and it's really good to see that the executive board take it seriously and to implement that. It will encourage more students to come forward and give the transparent opinion, what they exactly need, what they do not need, and what works and what won't, what don't, to make the student experience better. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights. It might help many students to understand how your ecosystem works and how the exec board works, or the whole system works. And as we say, stories have power, and in every story there is a spark, one that connects us, inspires, and even changes us. You might never know like how many students want to be in the academics or in the leadership position next by listening to this lovely work that you do for the students. If this episode resonates with you, don't forget to check out more Communities Episode podcast on our SU YouTube channel. And for the student listeners, explore the links in the description to explore more about the UL student experience and the student services and opportunities available for you. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next episode. Take care.